Hi everyone, and welcome to my review of Martin Scorsese's The King of Comedy in 1982. Here is the Blu-ray, and yes, back with another review. This time, this is the one that I've watched a couple of weeks ago now, for the first time. Of course, I probably mentioned it, some comments and stuff, but yes, I did watch this. Been meaning to review it, just in all honesty, I think I got stumped a little bit with the rating, and even now, it's been hard, but I think I finally got the rating that I give this film. So yes, here it is, and I got this, just over a month ago now. I think had never seen this film. I don't know why. I'd always been meaning to kind of see it for many years, probably about 10 years, just under that. I've actually wanted to see this film, and finally, picked up the Blu-ray. I don't know why I didn't have it in my collection sooner. But yes, I watched it, and there's no point, delaying it. I absolutely love this film. I think I was blown away. It really was everything I wanted it to be, and more. I think this film is very different. Really, you could say it's almost the one of the only Scorsese films that is actually a full-on, or at least in many terms a comedy. This is a black comedy, but then again. Actually, some of his other films are funnier than this because this is a very dark comedy, and it's more about the kind of the awkwardness of it, in terms of the humour, and actually, the psychology of it all, of this character that makes it at once funny, but very, actually quite, moving and disturbing. And yes, this film is basically, it's after, of course, Raging Bull, Scorsese. And due to a couple of things, including, of course, Chimina's Heaven's Gate, kind of making everything go wrong. United Artists went under, and everything happened there. Scorsese, of course, affected Raging Bull, and its box office and all that kind of stuff. And yes, he's basically forced to kind of make smaller films for most of the 80s, and then, of course, he'd return, commercially with Goodfellas in 1990. But this is it's the first one, of course, of the smaller films, more low-key, you could say. And yes, generally, I suppose, smaller budgets. But this, of course, stars Deniro, once again. And, of course, Raging Bull, just one of the very best films of all time. And his performance in that is, it's a contender for his best. I think there's probably two other performances that I'd say are better, and that's The Deer Hunter and The Godfather Part 2. But to be honest, this is probably his third best performance, Raging Bull. And then, of course, The King of Comedy, very different. In Raging Bull, it was complete, it was a complete dark performance. There was comedy in there, but it was an animal, basically, at times, of course, beat his wife and all this kind of stuff. This one is kind of a return to, you could say, Taxi Driver, his kind of character in that. A couple of times I've heard this film, and the way it is a character study compared to Taxi Driver many times, and definitely, it's this character that kind of reacts to everything that's going on around him in very different ways. Of course, there's contrast between the two, but yes, it's basically someone reacting, and of course, someone that is very unhinged, and kind of, very vulnerable character, very similar in that sense. Of course, I would say no, there's no comparison between this and Taxi Driver for me in terms of the quality, but it's very similar in that sense. And this film basically, Rupert Pupkin is played by Deniro, and he's basically a comic, but he's not really successful, at the beginning of the film, and it's very clear that he's, he really wants to be, famous and all this kind of stuff. He hosts kind of talk shows pretend talk shows in his apartment. He lives with his mum as well. And basically the opening scene is, De Niro's character basically trying to get involved, talking to Jerry Lanford, who is played by Jerry Lewis. And he is basically a talk show host and, very successful, in the film. And of course, basically, the opening scene is crazed fans, trying to get in the car. And De Niro helps out and he basically gets in the car as well. And it all unfolds from there. You've got a very an opening scene really that grabbed me, had me interested, and just it was humour in there as well. I think it set the tone really wonderfully, and of course, it says everywhere the description of this film is, basically De Niro eventually, kidnaps Jerry Lewis's character, and in order to basically get an appearance on TV. So yes, that's not exactly a spoiler, but that is eventually some of the rest of second half of the film at least. But before that, you've got many great scenes here. You've got very very interesting narrative. Deniro, Rupert Pupkin, basically he keeps going to this place to try and talk to Jerry Lamford, and basically a lot of this stuff it becomes pretty easy, to work out that it is in his mind, and once again, I didn't know anything about this film really, and I was just wowed by how this was handled, really, blurring the lines between reality and fantasy really, and it has this kind of dreamy effect, in these parts, and that's perfectly, portrayed, and of course, De Niro in this film, once again, just for me, one of the best performances of all time. He is my favourite actor of all time currently. I've kind of, maybe in the last 3 years, it's been a tussle between him and Jimmy Stewart. Once I saw a lot more of his films, It's a Wonderful Life, I only just saw in 2016 for the first time. That kind of stumped me, but I think I still prefer De Niro just a bit, and I think he is the greatest. His very best films, just off the charts in terms of the films and his performances. And this performance, is absolutely masterful. Very, very hard to pull off. This is a satire. Very, very, at times you could say it's over the top, but it never is a flaw, and it always is controlled perfectly. The performance, is that as well. It's so controlled, but it's very, very, free. It feels free. De Niro, of course, there's many moments where his hysterics, he's laughing and everything, and he controls it so well that it just works perfectly. It's a hilarious film, and his performance, it's funny at times, but again, very very powerful and disturbing at times. I feel you feel the vulnerabilities from his performance, and of course the script is absolutely wonderful. It's very very thought provoking and inspirational. This film, it kind of what this kind of shows is the lengths that people are willing to kind of go to become successful, famous, chase their dreams, and even when things aren't going well, and what people would go to actually just get ahead, and of course this stuff in his mind and the stuff that actually plays out in the film is all powerful. It's all funny and powerful at the same time. And it's just a perfect kind of balance between humour, satirical elements, and a very, very moving drama, and a masterful character study. This film is for sure a masterpiece. The cinematography, not as striking or as wowing as Raging Bull or some Taxi Driver and stuff. Again, this is very much more low key film in terms of that as well. But the cinematography is wonderful. They actually, Scorsese uses kind of in effect, so De Niro, it seems like he's actually on TV and stuff, and at different points in the film, and the way he uses that and integrates it into the film, it's genius. I think it really gets you more involved in the film, and yeah, I think the use of colours in this film are wonderful. Even just the costumes, of De Niro and everyone, and just the supporting cast. Absolutely brilliant in this film as well. Jerry Lewis, wow, he is absolutely brilliant in this film. It's very, very a dark character, you could say at times. When the stuff is actually happening, and it's just a thoroughly compelling performance. I think the dynamics work between him and De Niro so well. And it's just so well done. The performance is brilliant. De Niro is even better, of course, and you've got loads of different side characters in the film as well. Masha, she was a very good character as well. She was great. Loved what happened there. She was a character that kind of, was kind of on De Niro's side throughout the film. And yes, I just think, in every area of this film is an absolute masterpiece. It blew my mind. I think it really, really moved me. But while also all the comedy in this film works perfectly. There's never a moment where it kind of breaks tone. It's very, very hard. This is a very, very hard film to pull off. But once again, Scorsese proving that he can do most things really. I think, and especially comedy. I think, while also being a very, very deep film. Even Wolf of Wall Street. I reviewed that course, it's one of the, well, for me, one of the funniest films of the century and probably of all time. But it has got very, very moving moments. Overall, the scope of it, it's just an epic film that kind of, I was compelled by fully. There's never a point where I thought, the comedy overtook anything. And Scorsese kind of does this in a lot of his films. Raging Bull for me is one of the times. It's got so much great comedy. It's so funny. And Taxi Driver has its moments. Of course, Goodfellas, one of the funniest films for me at times. Scorsese always, mostly has comedy in his films without really being comedies. And this is, one of the only ones actually that is, can be really classified, by genre as a comedy, at least a black comedy. And it's so good. It did not disappoint. It really, really it exceeded my expectations. I think if you've not seen this film, you have to check it out. It's essential. It didn't, of course, do very well, at the time. And, it's kind of tossed under the rug, you could say, by many. But then, in recent, certainly in the last decade, it seems like, this is getting more attention. Mark Kermode actually said, it's his favourite Scorsese film, and it's understandable. It's a stunning film. It's really, really, really wonderful film that, I'm glad it's getting more, love now, and it's just another one of Scorsese's masterpieces. Now there are 10 masterpieces that he's made that I've seen, and I believe a total of 14 that I've seen now. So that's a pretty good track record for me. That's an understatement. This guy is a genius. Deniro, wonderful in this film, and I think it definitely easily gets full marks from me. So overall, of course, the King of Comedy gets into my plus tiers. You can probably tell by the way I'm kind of describing it. This is a mind-blowing film that really, in terms of its tone, the way it's shot and edited, the way it has this atmosphere throughout the film that's very, very dark, but just like that, can kind of switch, and go to comedy, and it never breaks. The overall tone of the film, the way the performance is so perfect. Sandra Bernhard as well, she is great in this film, of course, as Masha. Really, really great character. Loved all the relationships, very, very complex. Jerry Lewis is absolutely brilliant in this film. He was absolutely outstanding, and De Niro, as I say, he really carries the film, and it's such a perfect performance, that it has to get into my plus tiers. This film, the way I connected to it, and what it kind of says, and how it's executed, how enjoyable this film is, and kind of how moving it is as a character study, and as a kind of way that in a way it explores the American dream, and just how far people will go. That's what it is, the desperation, really, of people in general, but people that want to be famous, and just achieve their dreams, and they're kind of living in a maybe not so great place, seeing other celebrities and all this kind of stuff. It deals with so many things that most films have never really done, certainly not as good as this, never pulled off as well. So yes, it gets 100% plus tier 2, and it was between that and a tier 3. I thought it was just on the cusp of that, the kind of borderline, and I thought, really, it's kind of grown on me even more, since I've watched it. I'm glad I've kind of waited a couple of weeks, but this film instantly became one of my favourite films, easily into my top 200 films of all time, which is very, very, special to pull that off. I think this is really a flawless masterpiece. It is a masterful character study, immensely powerful, hilarious at times, and at times, very, very awkward, and kind of in that sense. And of course, it's a thriller. It's a crime film, in a way as well. It's a comedy, black comedy, and it's just a moving drama for me. I really think De Niro is perfect in this film. Scorsese directs this film masterfully. He's always in control, tone, and just the script as well, and it's just absolutely stunning. If you've not seen this film, and of course a bit more of the underseen Scorsese films, you could say, but yes, check it out, because it really is, for me, an absolute masterpiece. I think it just blew me away, and I think I can't wait to rewatch it again. I think it's the 10th Scorsese masterpiece that I've seen, and that's very, very rare for a director to kind of getting to that, that status of 10 masterpieces, genuinely masterpieces. This is, I think this is probably better than a couple of them as well. I.e. Casino, which is one of my favourite films. I think this is better than that. And yes, can't wait to check out more Scorsese's, and of course, rewatch some of the other ones that I've not reviewed yet on the channel. That comes to mind, of course. Gangs of New York. Also seen Silence. Of course, Age of Innocence. All these ones. I'll be checking them out again and reviewing them. Yes, within the next sort of few months. So yes, thanks for watching my review of Scorsese's masterpiece, The King of Comedy.